Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone is able to hear our audio okay. So if you could please just type in the chat box, yes, or if we need to be louder, that would be greatly appreciated. Wonderful. Well, here in the office, we're really excited and we're ramping up for St. Patrick's Day weekend, as I'm sure a lot of you are as well. So we thought it'd be fun to offer a virtual taste of the Everything DiSC solutions. So before we start, I would just like to cover a few housekeeping items. We've opted for this Zoom meeting to be kept on mute just to eliminate background noise. And we will have some interactive questions throughout the webinar. And we'd love for you to have your comments and replies via the chat box, which it appears to me that most of you have been able to locate that and successfully use that, so that's great. Also, throughout the webinar, if you do have any questions that come to mind, feel free to pop them in there and we will populate them and revisit them at the question and answer portion at the end. And we'll be viewing this through the eyes of Molly. Molly is a fictitious marketing associate at the Triple Shamrock Brewing Company. As she progresses through her career and grows into various leadership roles, the components of each solution will help her succeed along the way. So you will be able to gain the understanding of the various offerings and how they can be applied in your organization's learning and development programs. So we'll cover everything from the DiSC model and finish all the way through of 363 leaders. And we'll conclude the webinar with a question and answer segment. So now I'd like to introduce you to our presenter, Karen Stacy. She's the owner of Creative Learning Solutions. Karen has worked with DiSC for over 25 years and is an authorized partner of the Wiley brand Everything DiSC Solutions. So top of the morning to you, Karen.
Top of the morning to you, Leah. And top of the morning to everybody who's here this morning. It's nice to see some familiar names on the webinar today, and I'm looking forward to getting started. So let's go ahead and do that. So to start off, I'd like to know how many people that are on the call today are familiar with the Everything DiSC products. And go ahead and type in the terrific. Great, so it looks like some of you are very familiar with the products, and so today will be hopefully an opportunity to learn about some of the other solutions that we have available to us. And so what we're going to do just quickly today is just give you a brief overview of the DiSC and the Everything DiSC profile. The assessment itself can provide really a wealth of information about behavioral priorities and preferences. And as many of you know, it's a very simple tool that helps people connect to the workplace. It gives people a common language. It also provides individuals with the knowledge of themselves first. And that really is core, because once we understand ourselves, we can begin to understand others more effectively. So let's do a quick overview of the DiSC model. And this looks obviously familiar to many of you. The model itself is based on 4 quadrants: dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And within the 4 quadrants, an individual's style, based on their assessments results, is positioned anywhere on that model. It's identified with a dot, and that dot will help tell you your unique story and what blend of any other styles might be incorporated into your style. In this particular illustration, what you'll notice is the dot is closer to the outer line, and it's centered almost equidistant from the edge of the D and S style. So this person would demonstrate strong I behaviors. So let's go ahead and move on to the tasting part of our webinar today. The core DiSC solution is the Everything DiSC workplace. And this provides individuals insights about their dot and how that translates for their personal style. The 22-page report provides a wealth of information that participants explore during the workshop. So for instance, they begin to understand how others may see them and how others may also misinterpret their behaviors. They begin to learn how they tend to react to other styles and strategies, and they learn to practice and bridge the styles with people that are different from them. So shortly after joining the Triple Shamrock Brewing Company, Molly and her team attended the Everything DiSC Workplace Workshop. And for Molly, what she learned was that she and her team were on different places on the map. For Molly, she's a pretty high I, but has a little bit of S or steadiness style because her dot is very close to the IS blend. And Molly learned where the other people in her team were located around the map. What Molly began to discover is that she had a clearer view of her priorities on the outer band of the map here. She learned about her priorities, her motivators, and her stressors. But she also had a better understanding of what the priorities, motivators, and stressors were for the people on her team that had different DiSC styles. Like her colleague who was a high C, his dot was right here. And his focus was on accuracy, stability, and challenge. So as Molly began to understand her coworkers, she also learned strategies to adapt and bridge her style. So with her D colleague, she minimized small talk and got right to the point. With her S style coworkers, she encouraged collaboration and encouraged them to share ideas and their concerns with her and the team. And with her C coworker, Molly recognized she needed to stick to the facts and provide data and information. So overall, this experience helped Molly and her team work on how to communicate more effectively together and have productive team meetings. However, like any team, they sometimes struggled with making decisions, solving problems, and seeing eye to eye. And this could often lead to conflict. So they decided to take their knowledge of DiSC to the next level by participating in the Everything DiSC conflict program. So I'm always curious when I'm working with groups to learn a little bit about what comes to mind when they think about conflict. So take a moment and chat in the chat box, jot down what is the first word that you think about when you are in a position that involves some conflict. Be uncomfortable, misunderstanding, avoiding it, absolutely. Unsure of the results, absolutely. So what's interesting about conflict for many of us, it can be a challenge, and it often gets a bad rap. Some people prefer to avoid it, or others, depending on their style, will try to hit it head on, but can be seen as offensive or argumentative. However, productive conflict can be a powerful tool within an organization if it's approached the right way. So during the Everything DiSC Productive Conflict Program, individuals began to learn about their styles in conflict and what was important to them. This report provides details about, one, what drains your energy during conflict, your behavioral tendencies, and the behavioral tendencies of other styles in conflict, and what drives them in conflict situations. It also reviews destructive comments that are driven by our inner or automatic thoughts. What we know about conflict is sometimes destructive comments, which are based on automatic thoughts, kind of that stuff that's going on in your head, can show up as coming off as being dismissive or argumentative, maybe becoming defensive. And for some people, it's about caving in. But nevertheless, it leads us to destructive outcomes. So in this program, participants learn how to manage these automatic thoughts. They learn how to reframe them, as Molly did in the example on the screen. And those reframed thoughts can help to lead to productive responses and to positive outcomes. During the program, participants are exposed to different ways of not only thinking and reframing, but also how to rephrase thoughts so that the outcomes are positive. And they have an opportunity to work through some specific personal scenarios to see how they would have dealt with something differently. Now for our friend Molly, she's doing pretty well here at Triple Shamrock Brewing Company, and her success in marketing has now led to a promotion into the sales team. As part of her development plan, she's participating in a workshop that will provide her an understanding of her sales style and how to recognize and adapt her style to her customers' buying style. So in the Everything DiSC sales program, Molly learns how her DiSC style influences her approach when providing service and offering her products to her customers. She learns about her strengths and her weaknesses. She also learns how to read and understand the buying styles of her customers and what drives them. She also is able to begin to practice and learns how to bridge and adapt her style with customers to build strong relationships. This program is very much focused on the relationship of selling and how to create those relationships through the language of DiSC. She also picks up some tools along the way to help her quickly read potential customers so that as she's starting off in the sales process, she can feel comfortable choosing the best approach for her and for her customer. So applying what she learned from DiSC, Molly was able to meet her sales goals, build strong relationships with her customers, and successfully contribute to organization's goals. Now, Molly is doing extremely well in this company, and after a couple of years in the sales department, the management has decided to promote Molly to a position of marketing department manager. And that's great for Molly. She's really excited about it, but she's a little apprehensive because she's accustomed to self-managing and focusing on her own work. And now she's going to have a team of 6 people. Some of them she knows, some of them she doesn't know. And so that apprehension has really kind of made her a little bit nervous about this new position. And because she knows that the skill sets that she'll need will be very different and will require her to think differently and now not do the work herself. She has to manage other people so that they can get the work done. She's had some good managers along the way throughout her career, but she's also had some managers who were not so great. And I'm sure all of you have been in that situation. I know I have. So I'm curious with the group, think about a time when you had worked for a manager whose style was frustrating for you. And in the chat box, jot down what was the cause of your frustration. What kind of behavior showed up that really made it difficult for you or created a problem? Let's see what everybody has experienced. Lack of organization. Okay, wanting you to move quicker and then you felt comfortable with. Not a lack of open mind and new ideas. Absolutely. And when you think about that, when that happens for you, how does that get in the way of you being successful? What were some of the roadblocks that you encountered when you were working for a manager who didn't support you quite as well? I know for me, I had a manager who was a huge micromanager. And the more she micromanaged me, I see that coming up for on the chat box. The more I was micromanaged, the more defensive and defiant I got. So I probably didn't do the best job. So it's important to recognize that Our role as a manager is very different as from being an individual contributor. So let's look at what the Everything DiSC Management Program can do to help managers learn how to manage well. In the management report and the program, the participants receive a 27-page management-specific report. So it helps them understand their DiSC style in their role specifically as a manager. It identifies their natural management style. It also helps them to recognize how to adapt their style and approach their ability to direct work and delegate work to others, and how that might look a little bit different depending on the DiSC style of the individuals that are on their team. They also learn how their DiSC style and their team's style influences motivating factors. What might motivate one style is not necessarily going to be the same motivator for another style. And that becomes really important when thinking about how do you engage your team to do the best job that they possibly can. The next area that this report focuses on is how, as a manager, can you coach and develop others? How can you build their potential and work with them in a productive way that gets them to that next level? And the last piece of this report, which I really like, and oftentimes we don't see this, is insights for the individual on how they can build strong relationships with their own managers. Because that becomes important in how you communicate up just as well as how you communicate down. The report also provides very specific tips, strategies, and action plans that managers can learn and practice on an ongoing basis to become better at what they do. So at Triple Shamrock, which has been growing very quickly, Molly has recently now been promoted from the manager of the marketing department to VP of marketing and sales. This role now comes with significant differences from her role as a manager. Now, instead of managing one-on-one, she's responsible for leading many. And that's where our next solution comes into play, the Everything DiSC Work of Leaders. And in this particular program, it really helps people to think more strategically and recognize how they can manage many people within their organization versus that one-on-one that they did as a manager. So Molly participated in the Everything DiSC Work of Leaders workshop, and what she found was this program provided her with a framework to learn how to be a leader. In the 23-page leader-specific profile, Molly was able to explore how her style influenced her role as a leader. She received information about how her style influenced her approach in the leadership framework, looking at her approach towards vision, alignment, and execution. And she also learned strategies and steps that leaders need to take to increase behaviors that are linked to best practices. So this model was actually developed based on contemporary thought leaders in the leadership field today. This illustrates a high-level look at what we call the VAE model, vision, alignment, and execution. Leaders participating in this program gain a clear understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, and they focus on actions that will help them lead their organization and meet their organizational goals. The detail in this report is just so incredibly helpful for leaders, and it really serves as a guideline for ongoing development in their role. And what we know about management and leadership training is that it continues to show up as one of the development areas that most people, when they're surveyed in different organizations, they need and they request. And what we also know from Gallup is their research over the last 25, 30 years is that building strong teams and retaining people is heavily based on what managers do and they don't do well. People leave managers, not companies. Also, employee engagement numbers are directly tied to managers' and leaders' actions and behaviors. So one of the ways that leaders can really get a read on how well they're doing is to use a 360 feedback tool. With the Everything DiSC solutions, we have a tool called the Everything DiSC 363 Leaders. And I know some of you are probably saying, what does 363 mean? Well, we'll get there in just a moment. But before we do, what I'd like to do is ask the group just to get a pulse on how many of you have ever participated in a 360 feedback process where you were required to give your manager or a peer anonymous feedback. Or have you ever received 360 feedback from your own peers or your manager? If you had, I'm curious what your reaction was to the process. Did you find it comfortable or uncomfortable? So any of you that have been involved in the process, go ahead and type in whether you found it a comfortable or uncomfortable process. Okay, so for some of you, it was uncomfortable. You know, and it's funny, in my work over the last 25 years, I had found that for many people, it can be very uncomfortable. The other thing, yes, I agree, it depends on how it's delivered, that's for sure. The other piece about feedback was, when you think about it, did you find that the feedback was constructive and helpful? Or if you were the recipient of the feedback, did you find that it was not constructive, hurtful, or it actually didn't provide you with anything that was really productive? So let's hear from the group in terms of, what was your experience in the feedback process? I believe it does depend on how it's delivered, and sometimes it's not contextual enough. What I find when I'm working with some of my coachees or I'm working with clients is that they've had really negative 360 feedback experiences. So I tend to approach this in a very cautious way, because I think if you don't have a tool that provides you with good, positive, constructive feedback that people can take and use and they find is helpful, then it can tend to be a very destructive process. And that's one of the reasons that I really like the 363 leadership feedback tool that we have. So what makes this tool unique is something we refer to as Comment Smart. So once your rater goes in and rates their leader on a competency, say on a scale from 1 to 5, when they click, say, 3, what happens is this box pops up, and it helps the individual who's responding tailor their feedback so that it is measurable, it's more objective based, and it also provides productive feedback. And so it makes this whole process not only easy for the people who are rating the individual, but it also provides the person who is receiving the 360 feedback with really good, positive information. And that's why this particular feedback tool is unique to the many 360 feedback tools that are out in the market today. So Molly's takeaways from her 363 feedback gave her some understanding around her approach to leadership and how others saw her as a leader. And as I said, what makes this unique is not only the Comment Smart feature, but it also provides context-specific feedback. it gives people a clear definition of the 8 approaches of leadership and how they measure up against those 8 approaches. It provides people with 3 personalized strategies, hence the 363. Those 3 personalized strategies identify areas for improvement. And also, as I mentioned, the selectable comments provide constructive feedback versus destructive feedback. So that concludes our taste of the Everything DiSC solutions. And for a couple of minutes, I'm going to open it up for questions. I see that we have like 2 minutes left. And so I'm curious, what questions do some of you have in the group that you'd like us to respond to today? And go ahead and type those in.
And just while everyone's typing in some questions, we just thought we would kick it off with a common question that Karen gets a lot when speaking to new clients. And that is, so if my organization has an in-house, training department that does all the learning and development, is there any way that we can take on the responsibilities to deliver the DiSC solutions ourselves?
Yes, that is a very much a common question that I receive. And with the Everything DiSC, there are a couple of options for companies. We do offer a certification, although that's not required. And there is a facilitator guide, which is very well scripted. And as a partner of Creative Learning Solutions, when a company decides to bring a program in, we will take time and work through the material and make sure that they're able to customize it to their organization and their individual needs.
Excellent. Very good.
So any other questions that some of you might have? Yes, so we'll be happy to share the DiSC reports with you. Matter of fact, I'm going to, the next slide we'll pull out. Let me just move into the next slide. You'll see my email address right there. So please email me and let me know of any of the reports that you would be interested in receiving, and we'll make sure that we get those right off to you. I think once you see the reports and see the wealth of information that is enclosed in those, you'll find that you'll really have a true understanding of how, really how rich these reports are and the things that people can learn and take away from. Yeah. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, we are at the half of the hour.
Half of the hour,
as the Irish would say.
And it's Friday leading into St. Patrick's Day, so I'm sure a lot of us are going to get back to our work to, finish up the day. But we do really appreciate everyone for joining us. And again, as Karen said, please feel free to reach out with any questions, and we will be sending out a follow-up email as well, just with a little more information on how you can contact us. And of course, we can always follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. So be sure to look for some fun updates in our next webinar as well.
Very good. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great, happy St. Patrick's Day and enjoy the warm weather today if you're in the New England area. Have a great day.